Okay. So I would like to, first of all, thank all of you who are in this room together with us, and thank mostly to Robert Otok, who is the director of ASPHER, to be with us to comment in this session. I would also like to thank all of us who are are assisting to this session on YouTube, and those who will assist in the future if this becomes an historic session on internet. I would first of all tell you about the aim of this webinar. We wanted to discuss in the 15th anniversary of ISPUP, how is training being adapted and adequate for the challenges we have in public health. So we thought of joining in the same room people from different areas who are doing different things and with different expertise levels. So people like juniors as Nora and Carolina, and people who are more experienced as, for example, Marta, who are working already in big companies. People who are doing public health in the field, for example, as Joana and Carlos, and those who are doing research in the industry, as Marta again, or doing research in the academy, as Ana Martins. Also, we have people from the professional organizations like Luís Amaro, and also people who are working actually in NGOs who are actually doing public health without being in public health in our NHS. The idea is to listen to you, to listen to the perspectives of these people regarding these questions, what challenges have been facing, how is training adapted and adequate to these challenges, what challenges can be brought in the future, and can we be better prepared to these challenges in the future? And yeah, we'll do it by first presenting yourselves, then, well, discussing these issues and these ideas, then listening to Robert, and in the end, looking into the questions that you are going to put on YouTube, on the commentary sections, and understanding what do you think and what are the questions that you want to pose to different people. I will start by presenting myself. I'm a medical doctor, I'm a public health specialist, and I do research on public health as well. And I started working with ISPUP recently. And maybe I'll pass the word to Joana, who was next arriving here.
Okay, my name is Joana. I'm in the fourth year of public health residence. I finished my master in health education in 2019. And now I'm working a public health unit in Gaia. So thank you for the invitation.
Carlos, do you want to follow?
Sure. My name is Carlos. I'm also a public health doctor. I worked for about 6 months as a public health specialist in a public health unit, in Gaia. Then I started working at a regional level, so in the north region of Portugal, in public health department. And when COVID started, I started working on COVID full-time, also at the regional level. And I'm still working there now. My experience is mostly on data management and public health observatory.
Luís, you want to be next?
Hi, I'm Luís. I'm a nutritionist. I work at my regulatory authority of the profession here in Portugal. I mainly do studies about the profession, employability, and mainly the integration of nutritionists in professional settings, including public health.
Anna, do you want to present yourself?
Hello, good afternoon to all who are listening to us and to everyone here in the room. I'm Ana Martins. I'm a bachelor in biochemistry, and I have a master in public health. I finished in 2016. Then I had a brief work experience for a dermocosmetic company, but then I decided to do a master in applied mathematics, and I'm now doing my PhD also in applied mathematics. So I think I'll bring here a bit of a different perspective, but I'm hoping to have a great discussion with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Danielle, go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Simões. I'm a psychologist by training. So over the last 15 years, I've been working in with people in socially disadvantaged situations. I started off in child protection, then went into social housing, but for the last little over 10 years, I've been working in infectious diseases at a community level. I've been doing project implementation and also policy work, both at a national and a European level, including with the ECDC and WHO.
Thank you. Carolina.
Hello, my name is Carolina Maganate, and I'm in the second year of the public health residence. That's why I'm currently a student of the specialization course in public health at ISPUP. That's why I'm here. I studied in Lisbon at Nova Medical School, and since then I have been working in Bragança. I have a particular interest in the area of management and planning, and I'm also participating in postgraduate program in health service management at Porto Business School.
Okay, thank you. Marta, hi.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Marta Pereira. I have a degree in biochemistry. I was part of the ISPUP family between 2005 and 2014, so really a long time I spent there. Since that time I moved to London and I'm currently working in a pharmaceutical company, so I'm coming I will bring a different perspective to the discussion. I'm now leading the affiliates when they produce real world data. That's the name that they have in pharma companies for observational research. I'm looking forward for the discussion with all of you.
Thank you, Marta. Nora, hi.
Okay, good evening to all. First of all, sorry for my voice, but I'm dealing with our lovely COVID, so all good here. And basically, I'm a nutritionist. I'm now finishing my first year of public health master, and next year I'm probably going to be working with WHO on salt reduction policies and also helping with sugar reduction policies in the Moscow headquarters.
Thank you. And last, but of course not the least, Robert Otok. Do you want to present yourself, your background?
Just shortly, Teresa, thank you very much. First of all, it's my great pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'll be very happy to follow your stories and comment and wrap up, with some points from more ASPHER perspective. ASPHER stands for the Association of Schools of Public Health in the European region, which ISPUP is a very strong and active member of. And I'm a director of the association, working closely with the 9-person executive board. Actually, we have a representation of ISPUP in the ASPHER executive board. I will say more about ASPHER when there will be my time for commenting. While few words about myself. I've been with ASPHER now for 10 years. I'm leading on the secretariat services and coordination of the ASPHER executive board work. We are based in Brussels. And my background is in public health, business administration, and higher education. So I'm a fellow of the UK Faculty of Public Health. I'm originally from Poland. So I spent some time in Utrecht, working in different public health posts and broader. So I'd be happy perhaps also to share some of my stories as well with you, and very much looking forward, to listening first of all to you. And yes, my pleasure again. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you for being able to be with us, and thank you all for the presentations. You were just super brief, which was great to have some time to discuss these topics. So I think that we can first start by learning with the experience you had together until now. And I think that we could start by asking, okay, what challenges appeared until now in terms of public health, or in terms of your career after public health schools? And I would ask maybe in two groups, to Joana Moreno and Carlos, because they are working in the field at the regional and local level, and also to Marta and Raquel, because they are working in a different perspective, like based on, well, real world data, as Marta mentioned, looking at patient outcomes, thinking about research in their daily lives. So maybe I will start by Joana and Carlos. what challenges did you felt until now in terms of public health? Did you feel that you had enough tools or skills to answer to those? What skills or tools were missing to be better able to respond to these challenges? I don't know who wants to start. Carlos, Joana?
I think Joana won't mind if I start, so I can go ahead and answer that. Past and current challenges, and there are a lot of them, as you may know or imagine. And I said that my background was mainly in data management, and I must say that there are a lot of challenges in data management, lack of tools, lack of knowledge, lack of specific tools. Let's say that there's not a lack of available tools if we have the skill or the time to learn. But the pandemic showed clearly how unprepared we were, and we still are, to deal with data and manage data at several levels, from the local to regional and national level even. And we can say that those challenges are related to the sheer amount of data that was generated by dealing with COVID, as well as the increasing complexity of data, because we started with lab tests, and then we have contact tracing. We have the need to deal with bureaucracy regarding people's isolation and appointment of tests with laboratories. And then it gets even more complex. You start talking about reinfections, and that poses a challenge, an even greater challenge, and then vaccinations, and if the vaccine works or not. Can it fail? Can we have cases in vaccinated people? And that poses different types of challenges that change over time, and it gets increasingly complicated because you have to deal with all the data that you already have, and you need to prepare your systems for that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. We say, I don't know if it's in the rest of the world as well, but in Portugal, we used to say that this is the Excel pandemic, because the pandemic was managed in Microsoft Excel. And we already had a great tool that was Excel Online, that allowed people to work in real time. But I think that, that there is a very different level, or let's say inequalities in knowledge and skills in how to deal with data. And you have people that use, for example, a very common example is using colors instead of variables to convey very important information. People would use red if a person is infected, or yellow if it's sent to test. And this is not very good, as we know, because we lose a lot of important information this way. And these are simple concepts that we can teach and we can train. And I'm saying this because the focus here is how can public health tools help deal with, can help or can teach or can be useful in training public health workforce. And there are simple concepts that can be trained and can be taught that could have helped greatly, and can certainly help for the next pandemic that will come sooner or later at the local and regional level. And I'm talking about the next pandemic because, yes, we managed, for better or for worse, we managed this pandemic, but the next step is using this pandemic to generate information so that we can give a better response to the next one. And I think we are failing, or we are not doing the best that we can in that regard. That we could have gotten more information that we did, and we can't go back now because we have thousands, millions of cases, hundreds of thousands in Portugal, I think. And it's very difficult. You of course cannot go back and dedicate all the time to clean those cases, and there's a lot of information that was already lost. And what tools, if this is a challenge, what tools did we use at local and regional level to overcome these challenges? We started with Excel, as I said, and then as the amount of data increased, we had to move to relational databases, and we had to change to other software to do data management and to create information and knowledge from those data, like STATA or has a great advantage because it's open source, and of course there's a great online community. And I didn't know a lot of R. I knew basically nothing about R before the pandemic, and now I can work with R as my main tool. I basically replaced Excel with R. This was, of course, a good opportunity that came from the pandemic. But I think this is something that can be trained and can be practiced, and is a field where public health schools can have an important role for the future. And this was, yeah, sure.
No, I was wondering if Joanna felt exactly the same about the Excel pandemic and the issues regarding to that. Maybe I will interrupt you then and then come back at you, Joanna.
Yes,
is it an issue in Gaia?
Yes, it was an issue that I write down to talk about today, because in the beginning, and we know that our systems are that we used to use nowadays are not enough to give an adequate answer to our problem nowadays, COVID problem. And we had to create parallel systems to deal with this data. And the problem is that not everyone knows Excel or other like Drive, Excel Online or other systems. Even younger people, I was surprised about that. So Carlos said, and I thought, and I felt the same in local level. But I think the biggest problem in local level was the stress that we felt during this time, because I don't know if you know about our usual activities, but we're not prepared for this stress. We don't work with the stress usually, and I think teams were not prepared to this. So I think we have to invest in soft skills like stress managing, team leadership. I think is missing this formation during our specialty and even during our faculty formation. And there is other things that are missing. The way that we talk with population. 1 year and a half after the beginning of pandemic, we are talking with people and we understand that the information is not coming the right way to them, and probably it can be our problem. We are not communicating correctly, but we don't have adequate information in this. So of course, data is important, and we felt that problem, but I think we have to invest in teams and their formation in these soft skills, because we have to work as a team. We have to integrate other people. We are not doing it alone. And the pandemic showed us that if we join more people, we create a multidisciplinary teams, we will do a better work than we were doing only doctors alone or nurses alone.
It is interesting because before we started, Ana Martins was saying exactly that, okay, there is a lack of resources. So I think that many people are feeling the same. We are alone, but we should not be alone. We should have different people working with us with different backgrounds, and maybe with a common training on public health. Now I'm just puxando a brasa à minha sardinha, as we say in Portuguese, just taking the heat to my sardine in English. I don't know if it's a good translation. But anyway, Carlos, did you want to add anything? I think you were complementing your answer with another issue that you were thinking.
I would like to talk about, or I had prepared the second issue, that I think is an important challenge that we feel, and this also has an impact for COVID, but it's mostly for our practice in the public health unit, and I'd say it's relating to law, because in Portugal, public health doctors have a role that's called health authority, where basically we intervene in the name of the state to promote and protect public health. And that means that as a health authority, as a public administration authority, you can't do anything you want. You have to act according to a set of principles. And I think that there is yet a lack of training in that area. I think that there is not a common understanding as to the extension and the limits to which we can act as health authorities to further public health. And that is being increasing, that is being taught more and more now during the pandemic, as we see a greater number of people asking for habeas corpus because they feel that it's not acceptable to be in prophylactic isolation. And the legal framework is not yet completely understood, and that this is an example as relating law to the pandemic, to the COVID pandemic. But there is also other concepts, other examples. For example, can we allow people to smoke indoors? Portuguese law has some exceptions where people can smoke inside the restaurants and bars. But we know as public health experts that tobacco is a group 1 carcinogenic, and public law allows people to smoke inside bars and restaurants, but public law prohibits workers to be exposed to a group 1 carcinogenic. What can I do as a public health doctor, as a health authority, to change this? And I think that this sort of training with people who specialize in law could be useful in our training. And I'm talking now as a public health doctor that will work in a public health in the future, and specifically as a health authority. So I think this is a general theme that where public health schools could work.
It makes all sense. Actually, we are all, as we do the training in the specialty of public health, we feel almost entitled as a resident. Okay, I will be able to do whatever I want if it's inside this law. But actually, there is some difficulties in it, and of course there must be some limits. And yes, why not having some training with people who understand the law and understand in which situations it may be applicable or not, and how could we frame it correctly to be correctly applied. It makes all sense. Maybe I would now ask Marta and Anna to share their experiences. They are completely different from these ones, which is super rich. And I think that they can help us to understand what they have been doing, what were the challenges that they had, and how did the training help or not to overcome these challenges. I don't know who wants to start.
I don't mind starting, that's okay. So yeah, it is totally different what I'm going to say. So when I saw your question, I was thinking in terms of how my time at ISPUP has been being super helpful in everything that I've been doing. So because I'm working at Roche, that means that I have to deal with huge investments, and I need to decide if we should pay X amount of money for a specific data set. And at the time when I was studying at ISPUP and doing my PhD and my postdoc, I was not super happy with the fact that I actually had to go to the hospitals and extract the data myself and do the analysis. So I pretty much had to do everything from the early beginning until I got my thesis. But right now, that's extremely useful for me every single day, because when I need to discuss, are we going to buy this data? Is this useful for Roche? I can ask the tricky questions that people don't see right away. And so what I'm trying to say is that sometimes when we are doing our trainings, we don't look at the type of things that we need to do as something that will bring a lot of value in the future, because those are time consuming. But what I can say is that everything that I did at this book it's been super helpful nowadays when I see the big picture, because I can go into the details and I can ask the right questions, I suppose. But now I would like to bring the other parts. I would really like to have this book more open to pharma. I would like to see more collaborations, because we are working with a lot of academic institutions, with Aarhus University, for instance, where we work together side by side. And I know that people have this idea that people in pharma are not good enough and we don't do good science. But I think there's a lot of good people at pharma and people with a lot of knowledge and experts in a lot of areas. So I would like to see that a bit more, if I can ask something.
That's curious, because I think that most people, it's not that people are not good enough on pharma, at least my perspective, but there is always this fear of conflict of interests. And I think that's where the issue is. But this can be discussed afterwards, I think, with the boss. Anna, do you want to continue from this
Yes,
perspective?
of course. I would also then like to add to the things that Carlos was saying, but maybe on the things that we can do to improve workforce training maybe later, because I think what he was saying was very, very interesting. So my experience is completely different from Marta, and I think a bit from everyone here. So I did my master at ISPUP, and I had the opportunity to do research in ISPUP along with great researchers there. But then I actually felt the need to learn more about statistics, because I felt this was such an important tool for public health, because this is the way that you can quantify and support your hypothesis. And so that was what brought me to do my master in applied mathematics. And so now I'm doing the PhD, and even though I still work in applied settings, this means that I'm still a bit connected to health, because I'm developing some kind of models, some models. So this is for counts, things like hospital admissions, and these are low counts, because when you have low counts like 5, 10, 12, you cannot use the models that you generally use. So I don't want to be very technical. And so I'm developing models for these type of values. And then I use them for studying, for instance, hospital admissions and associated with air quality, for instance. So I work in an applied setting, but developing new methods. And I think this can be quite interesting for people who are working in public health and to collaborate more or to know more what is happening in other areas, because there are many things different from classical statistics that are being developed and then can be useful and to try and to see how the results work. So this would be helpful for both areas. But this was what got me interested in statistics in the first place, to know how and to realize how important this is, at least from a research perspective. Of course, for those people who are in the field, sometimes it's important to support the intuitive ideas that you have, because you think that something is going that way, but you still need to support it. And so I think maybe it's this for now that I can share. But yes, of course.
Do you think that public health training, like masters that you did, or in the public, or on the PhD as Marta did, should be more focused on statistics and its kind of modeling, or do you need to have another person who has more focused training in statistics that could be working with the regional level or local level or national level? What will be the balance?
So my opinion, that was actually, I was touching on that now because I was thinking and I forgot, because I felt this interest, but I don't think that a person working in public health must be an expert in statistics. Okay, I think you should know a considerable amount about statistics, but of course you should not be an expert, and it needs to be another person, as you said, on the local level, regional or national. That's very important. And I get a bit of the feeling that maybe in public health units, you don't have this kind of support, and maybe this is important to have and to exist. And another thing that I felt after starting in statistics was the use of R. So I've been using R for the last couple of years, and it's an amazing tool either for visualization and for exploring statistical models, and you have great support for a lot of packages, and you can have a considerable independence in using this kind of things, and you don't need to be an expert. So as Carlos was saying, but I definitely think it is important to have this pairing. And one thing that I think is more valuable for a person with my expertise, because I know public health, I know statistics, is that it's easier to communicate, because sometimes you're dealing with someone that is an expert in statistics, but they don't understand public health or health. And the fact that you come from very different areas, the communication is difficult. So the fact that you can have people that are also familiar or more close to applied settings will improve the work for sure.
Makes all sense. And thank you, Marta, for showing that doing the PhD and suffering during the PhD can help us to become good professionals in the future. I think it's a good motivational way of showing things.
Yeah, I remember how difficult that is. So I think
it's terrible, but I do understand it can be useful, actually. Maybe I would ask Luís and Danielle, that are from completely different backgrounds. Again, we have almost like a star in here with people with different fields, just putting together their ideas. Luís, regarding your activity in a regulatory or in a professional association, what does the training in public health brings to nutritionists? Is it well organized? Is it okay for nutritionists? Should it be different? I know that you're doing master in health education. It's a bit different, but I would like to have your perspective on this.
Well, in my profession in Portugal has a strong public health basis. We were born out of a necessity in a post-revolutionary scenario where the NHS was developing and all of the democratization of health access was developing, and the food systems and all these nutritional aspects were a need for the country. So there's a solid public health background in my core nutrition formation. However, we are facing some challenges as a profession. We are currently dealing with a specialization process, and public health is part of that process. And we are now defining like common languages and common concepts, and that brings us to the aspect that was already discussed, that we need to learn how to speak to one another. And I have this experience even in my professional setting, in which we are all nutritionists. But when I arrived to the masters, I was the only one. So I had to learn to talk with people from educational backgrounds, pharma backgrounds, psychology background, and it took a while to get to the same level, not only of expertise but also in communication. But that for me was a valuable opportunity for growth. And I think one of the aspects of the public health training is essentially that, to learn how to speak with people from very different backgrounds. I have the example, I've worked with people from geography, even associated with nutrition, which is kind of an awkward association in a first level, but it seems logical when you start to address the issues and to address the designs of our cities on all the relationship that has with health inequities, health access. And when you look at a workforce with a specific role in the community, and which people see with a specific role, one of the challenges is to go beyond that specific role that society gives to you. And in public health, you can learn how to dialogue with other people and learn a lot from other backgrounds, and you can really filter all that with your experience and contribute it in a positive way, and contribute to the development of communities and whatnot. That is our challenge right now. This specialization and this integration of different knowledges in such a specific profession for now.
Do you feel that only by the contact that you have in, I know, the classroom, is it enough to create a communication, or to improve the communication with different areas? Or do you feel that we should be focusing on that on the training? Just really focusing on working on that on the training.
Well,
is it natural?
Probably I don't know. I feel very lucky with my class. I must confess, because we all got along very well, and we had classes together with in some curricular units with the Master in Public Health, and it was also a great challenge to be with different, more international people, which was a great experience for me. And it really is some curricular units privilege that spirit of communication, of debate, of randomizing groups of people we don't know each other, and I think that's what happens in most of the settings. It's what's happening here, and it's an opportunity for growth, and it helps you in a more professional way to develop communication tools and to understand who is on the other side, being professionals, being people in the community, and that understanding of people's motivations, of people's practices, is also very important to adjust your own communication and be, well, in my case, a better health educator, because that's my focus in this moment.
Yeah, cool. Danielle, you're working on GAT for many years, and you're doing very interesting work on advocacy and public policy officer in supporting the policies, etc. And why to do a PhD in global public health? And is it giving you, what tools are you thinking or are you expecting to gain with these that will support your work or will support next challenges that you will have in the future?
So thank you, first of all. Let me say that there's a lot of points that I'd like to go to further ahead. I think this is a very nice discussion, but I'm really happy to see. So in the sense that there's an overall agreement on a few points that I also think are very key. So we'll go back to that, I hope, further ahead. So as you mentioned, my background is linked with community organizations for the last decade. And my objective joining a global public health PhD was exactly to acquire a training, like hard skills in public health that I did not have to begin with. I started in psychology, then I did a master's in, I'm a clinical psychologist initially. Then I did a master's in community psychology, so I got a bit of project management, it actually had some public health components in the logic of how do you implement interventions in different communities. But in fact, I lacked quite a few hard skills in terms of research and public health specifically. So that's what I came to look for. And I have to say that I was quite happy with what I found, in part due to something that Luis just mentioned, which is my class. We were a very diverse group, not only in terms of training. We had medical doctors, nurses, psychologists, etc., but also in terms of origins. We had people from Africa, Middle East, from different places in Europe. So it gives you contact with a series of different cultures, religious backgrounds, ways of life, perspectives on life, that I think is extremely enriching. And I mean, when we're thinking about public health, like broadly speaking, we are speaking about the health of individuals who are themselves extremely different. And we cannot think about designing whatever intervention it is that will work for everyone. And so I think that it should be mandatory that people have this critical thinking. And I think that's a very, very key part of training that you get sometimes through your life, sometimes through your professional practice. And it's something that's very hard to put in a curricula, but I think it's very critical, because you will inevitably be working for people who are extremely different from you, who have totally different life choices, totally different lifestyles, totally different economic situation, priorities in life, etc. And as public health professionals, whatever field we're working in, we're looking for solutions to improve the health of these people. Ultimately, I think that's the goal of everyone. And it requires us to, in a sense, try and think a bit like people who are very different from us think, or trying to address their needs in the best possible way. Which leads me to another point, and that I lacked a bit, and I was actually surprised in some instances that it wasn't rooted in culture. It's not in Portugal, apparently it's not anywhere, which is a culture of participation of people. Portuguese people are not very active socially and politically. It's a cultural thing. We're very active in the coffees, but we're not very active in general life, social life. And I think that that is something that we really need to change, at least amongst ourselves, is that we really need to ensure that whatever we're programming, whatever we're implementing, or whatever we are monitoring, we need to have the people that the intervention is aimed for as a part of the whole process. That's something that in me is very rooted, because it's something that's part of all of my professional life since the beginning. It's always been one of the principles, but it's something that in our formal health system is very absent in the majority of situations that I've seen until now. Even in terms of like more, let's say, more primary care oriented interventions, it's very rare that they are developed in a participated way with the population. It's good to see that, at least in the newer generations, and sorry for making a generational gap, but it exists, and Carlos and Joanna alluded to that, and it's one of the things that I'd like to touch as well. There is a big generational gap in terms of thinking health as something that is exclusively designed by the medical professionals, and thinking health as something that is multidisciplinary, that requires a lot of people with a lot of different skills. And I think that's a cultural change that we are still in the process of making. There's also a lot of other, let's say, rooted biases in our public health system, from gender to age in certain positions, to who can take certain positions. And we go back to the issue of multidisciplinarity. We can't have only medical professionals. We need to have a lot of people with a lot of different skills, hard skills and soft skills. Because I mean, I don't want to stretch it too much, but I think that communication is absolutely crucial. We are terrible at communicating health to people. We're not the only ones. Most of the world is, unfortunately. And actually, that's something we can learn from the private sector, because the private sector tends to be very effective at communicating. And it's one of the areas of collaboration that I think can be very interesting. Not only on research, obviously that's a given. There's extensive collaboration in terms of research, but I think in terms of communication, also because of the money that you have available, of course, but you see a very different style of communication from what is public health communication and private communication. And I think we can learn a lot from the private sector, not specifically pharma, obviously pharma as well, but from the private sector in general, and from the area of communication specifically. And I think we need more expertise in communication. That's something that could be part of the curricula. I'll wrap up just by saying that, and going back to something that Anna was saying, I found it amusing because I hate statistics by principle. I don't hate statistics. I love data. But actually, my current role is as a monitoring and evaluation manager for a coalition of organizations. But I hate the, let's say, the nitty-gritty part of the statistics, data cleaning, all of this stuff. It's not really what I like to do, and I love that there are people who like it. I think that's one of the wonderful things of working in teams, is that you can find people who are much better than you and who actually like to do things that you hate, and you complement yourself, and it's wonderful. But this to say that there is a lot of focus on hard skills in our training, which is good, and we need good hard skills. But there is a very big lack of focus on soft skills. And this, from the medical profession, I think there's a lack of human training, which is very, very pronounced in a lot of people from all generations. You have then better people and worse people, but I think there's a very big lack of human training. And I think that in our curricula as public health in general, we do need some training in a few soft skills. I think that communication, not only external communication, but communication with people from different sides of society is crucial, from policy to research to, we all see, I mean, I've been in meetings where it looked like we had people from 3 different worlds speaking amongst themselves, and no one could understand anyone. And you need to kind of pick up by practice how you should speak in different environments. And lastly, I think we also need some training, more soft training, on a couple of aspects that I believe are crucial for public health, which is the impact of inequalities and social determinants of health in health. And this for us and for society, I think it's one of the key areas of communication going forward. And mental health, which I think COVID brought up even more than it was already before. We need mental health for ourselves. And we've been seeing burnout galore everywhere. And I think we need to speak more openly about mental health as a public health issue in the country, because we are really far behind.
I would say that you were talking to each other's previously, because Joanna mentioned the burnout and the stress management that is quite poor, and leadership, and you're mentioning about communication as well as Luis, and then Marta told you about that as well as Anne, and then you hate statistics, but you think that you should have people that are part of the teams that are from different backgrounds, which is curious. And even Carlos mentioned about data management and the Excel pandemic. It's quite curious to see that actually live in the same world. And I think that you were mentioning, I do agree with that, is participation. I think that we do not participate as a community, but those who are in the roles that should collect participation, that should make it comfortable, that should hear to people, are also not trained on that. So that could be also part of communication as well, but also in terms of implementation of projects and planning, etc. So I think that there are some common ground in here. I will leave the two most difficult questions to Carolina and Nora, which are about the future. What do you see yourselves doing in the future in terms of career, and what do you see as a future challenge that you can have in terms of your career or in terms of the reality in which you will work with? And do you feel happy, or do you feel that the training you're getting now will help you then, or do you feel that other things may be missing that could be complementary? Nora, do you want to start, for example? You look super tired.
I can go ahead. Don't worry.
Thank you.
So thank you for the question. So basically, one of the things I was actually thinking about when now Danielle was talking was that, well, all along the year, I've also had a lot of the feeling that we are focusing a lot public health in research, and we're missing a little bit. There's a bit of a gap between research and what's actually happening with the research that we have, and how we are actually losing a bit the meaning of why are we doing the research for. So, and also furthermore, I think this is one of the things why I also feel less ready to work on the future with working in policies or helping in other senses, because we've had a lot of focus on research, as I was saying, but specifically on quantitative research, and also not prioritizing qualitative research as in the same position, and even still having a bit of a feeling that it is still not considered as well as the other one. And also for other students that we felt like maybe the thesis is important and studying and doing a research project, but also having an internship or a chance to work with an organization and understanding how it's actually happening. And this is basically what I was thinking, mainly.
Yeah, it makes sense. We are focusing too much on academy, but then less in the application of what you learn on different places. And it is very curious because also as a public health specialist, we discuss many times that quantitative data is really, really good and we should do research on that, but quality, it's a little bit, it's more it's trickier, etc. But it's not, actually they are complementary. So it's, I fully agree with you, actually. I support you on these claims.
Can I just add a little thing?
Yeah.
I also think that at the national level in Portugal, but this is, I think, a problem in the Portuguese context, that there is a lot of competition for funding as well for research specifically, which also leads to a poor cooperation between centers and also between the government and the research projects as well, which I think should be handled in some way.
Yeah. I don't know how, but I think you're, well, Marta has some solutions probably for that. Carolina, last but not least.
Yes, so I really felt in my skin the COVID problems, but I tried to thought further than that. And I think with my first steps with the public health workforce, I soon came up with the thought that if I could know what are the most prevalent population problems tomorrow, I could start intervening today. And this scenario really fascinated me. That's why I think that the health forecast tools have enormous potential, because they give us today answers about tomorrow. And I think the future came from these tools. But for these answers to be trustworthy, it's absolutely necessary to strengthen our health databases and change the paradigm, because many health professionals and clinicians do not attribute their due value to their records, and that's a problem. Having consistent health databases opens countless doors to the public health, allowing not only to support the planning of the health programs in forecast and trends, but also to institute new programs early and acting on the source of the problem. And we can apply that thinking about mental health and these kind of problems. And I think that starting by strengthening this knowledge about data collection and processing and what are the fundamental characteristics for creating a good database and presenting tools to work with data would be a great start for the future. And ISPUP and the other schools of public health, I think, should come invest in that knowledge, because in my opinion, it would be the future of our work. That's it.
Yeah, it makes all sense to have the appropriate data and data sets, and we are to be trained on working on that and create those and adapt those. And I think, I don't know who mentioned that, but the inequities that we have in different, or inequalities we have in different parts, that people know how to use them, people don't know how to use them, and having at least some consultants that are able to respond to that, but being able also to work with different statistical approaches, as Anna was mentioning. I think that I had here a question that was like for everyone, like what may be needed in the future to better respond. But I think that we are mentioning all of those already, like communication, data management, good statistic approaches, being able to communicate to each other's with the population, to participate correctly, to know other tools like R, or knowing how to forecast in the future, or as Nora say, okay, being able to work more with different centers, not having such competitive approaches, working with the industry, as Marta was mentioning. I don't know if I missed some of the points that you were mentioning, and knowing how to do stress management and preventing burnout.
Teresa, can I add something?
Yeah,
that I think is very important, and sometimes we forget that usually we do things in a determined way, and we have to leave our comfort zone. And as a master of health education, I think a lot about school education and what we do on the field about this, and we do the things that we did in the past for a long time ago. So it's important to understand that we evolve, and we have to learn more and change what we usually do. And I think it is difficult to understand that we have to change the way that we do things, and to improve here the health education, but other stuff, of course, and it is difficult sometimes.
Well, my internet is quite unstable. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think that, again, you touched on what Danielle was saying about being able to understand that different projects cannot fill all the needs of the different populations. So we have to adapt them and even understand how do they act on these populations. And again, here, what Nora was saying about the qualitative approaches can be very useful to understand what do people feel about those. And these could be better approached even in our training as public health or as health educators in the future. Robert, do you want to comment on these? Does any of those questions and answers that people were mentioning here surprised you?
Well, thank you. Not really, I must say. I probably will not surprise you by saying that these are the conversations that we at ASPHER, I mean, here while speaking, in different contexts, of our sort of membership network. And I may perhaps, give you a short presentation, like following my 5 slides, as I think, it will help to sort of structure my sort of talk and thoughts. And then, we could perhaps continue with the discussion after. Would that function okay? Because then by this, you would learn a lot about, what we also do, to address this and answer some of the questions that were posed during the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. So let me share the slides I prepared for you for today. And just a short introductory slide. I mean, ASPHER, as I promised to introduce it in more words earlier, I mean, it's a network of schools of public health in Europe, as per its name. It's a network of high variety. I mean, among its membership, you may imagine, I mean, the School of Public Health is not the very, the network of schools of public health is not a sort of, so much of homogeneous sort of group. I mean, these are different structures. One must say, though, that around 80% of them are academic based, I mean, university based structures, usually at the level of faculty or department within the medical school, which is very important since just for you to, for instance, know that in some regions, I mean, to be named School of Public Health or belong to an ASPHER-like network, a structure must prove it's actually established outside of the medical school, which is interesting. ASPHER has been founded in 1966, so it's by far one of the oldest public health networks in Europe. I mean, it's linked not so much then to the EU development and the health competency in the European Union agenda, but much more to the World Health Organization. And as such, it's been set up as the initiative of the World Health Organization. It's currently represented by membership in 150 locations across 45 countries across the region. So you may imagine, I mean, like, it's important. I mean, I wanted to mention this, since what you're talking about, your perspectives, your career stories, choices, dreams, kind of generally match, the country or the local or region public health system context and the chosen or already obtained training. So looking at the ASPHER network, I mean, people may have different views, like if you hear them from Portugal, like, in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, or from far north, to south. I mean, considering all these aspects, like so the system organization, the given location, and the type of training and structures providing that training. But what is interesting, I mean, as I said also at the beginning, I mean, a lot of concerns, I mean, doubts, I mean, challenges, and related efforts, I mean, are very much having a lot of in common. Having said that, also, of course, I mean, there is a growing number, I mean, and it's been growing for some time already, the internationally focused approaches, from schools and individual curricula, inspiring these other directions, going a bit outside. And then, having said that, for instance, just before this meeting, I've been participating in the meeting of so-called Global Network for Academic Public Health, where ASPHER-like organizations are meeting, The agenda I will touch upon as well in the next slides, or perhaps the program that some of you may have heard of, the EuroPub Health, an Erasmus Mundus, the EU-funded project actually targeting individuals from outside the European Union to provide them with the experience of doing the public health training in Europe. And as such, I mean, like the general saying, I mean, one could easily state, I mean, is that you pick training allowing you, to follow your sort of career path. If you sort of plan your career path, I mean, you basically look for training, that would equip you with competences that would best match, what you want to do, in your professional life. Then, of course, what kind of echoes, what has been said, before. One could say that yes, I mean, but public health is complex and less straightforward than other areas, so it doesn't really work, so straightforward as perhaps, in other fields. So that's also easy and sort of, I would say, an overused kind of statement in many discussions alike. So the question is it? I mean, so. And I must say, I mean, and also in response, to a lot of your questions and individual situations, I mean, to say that a lot is there in place, for you to sort of use it. I mean, since the subject of this seminar is actually the tools that you could use, and what's there actually happening, to sort of bring more clarity and to move on effectively. I mean, so the first point I wanted, to put also as a part of the kind of already, like the essence, but still sort of introducing, the last points of my talk. I mean, is that the work of WHO together with ASPHER, and actually is now fully endorsed and led by WHO with ASPHER steering role. The sort of devising the roadmap towards the public health workforce professionalization in Europe. And as perhaps some of you, and particularly those working in the regulatory context, I mean, like, no, I mean, these are, I mean, like, to simplify this, I mean, the 5 basic steps, for a professional group, to sort of advance on the professionalization agenda, to sort of check in order, to sort of put an effective sort of structure in place, to establish a so-called profession. And these are the competency framework, which in fact is there. I mean, a lot what you've been saying is already addressed, by, I mean, WHO, I mean, identified even pre-COVID times. But of course, it's very much strengthened, by the current pandemic situation. And in fact, all the skills and areas, like that public health schools should be addressing in the curricula and programs, either in general MPH or the continuing professional development aspect, which I will touch upon in a moment as well, are already sort of mentioned there. Of course, this is a dynamic document, that is there for you also, to comment, of course, and we'll be adapting as we follow with it. But you could see, I mean, it's very much balancing the so-called content and context. What some of you, were saying, I mean, like about this sort of, like the core of what the public health discipline, some curricula, I mean, like is understood as, I mean, in the science and practice, but also going broader, and to law, policies, and ethics, as also mentioned during today's session. But as you could see, I mean, that the blue element very much balanced with the red and yellow one, which relates exactly and addressing exactly what you've been speaking about. I mean, the need for this relation and interaction related competencies, including leadership and systems thinking, critical and collaborating and partnering, communication, culture, sensitivity, context, and advocacy. What I think Niels has been mentioning, and then performance and achievement, as well as focusing more on the kind of individual perspective, since the whole idea for this competency framework is to focus on the practice side, the performance achievement of individuals in practice, to be then named public health professionals. So in that sense, this competency framework is there well sort of defined, or at least, is addressed there. We've pretty much, like touching upon all the aspects that's been mentioned today. Which moves us the step ahead, for this, I mean, the professional identification that I will also explain later, why is it, I believe, so important. And unless we solve this, we will be back in similar seminars, in the next anniversaries of the Institute and other members of ASPHER. You know, the second point, I mean, is education and training. It is there already. As I said, I mean, there is considering the variety of, you know, represent with schools of public health belonging to ASPHER alone. I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, part of them, vast majority of them being part of academia, but also some of them being part of the local administration, some of them operating at the national level, sort of a training of civil service context, you know, for health administration and so on, and well, private public aspects and so on. I mean, one could say that, you know, if one asks, you know, about what public health curriculum is, I mean, there is a reference, including the ASPHER so-called core competences set, you know, which actually addresses then unlike the competency framework, exactly the challenge of curricula building and developing of education training in the field. So one could say that these two reference documents are there. What's there though missing and still challenging, you know, but we are moving forward, particularly on the third point, with the academic and professional credentialing. And I think once we move with this, I mean, we're almost there. That is the area of the standard setting within both the academic credentialing and professional credentialing aspect. So that to bring this identification, you all through some sort of public health training, and you all naturally claim the right to be called, I mean, part of the public health workforce. You know, there is a kind of, I would say a different approach, you know, I'm sure also within this group, you know, to what extent, I mean, you'd aim to be called a public health professional. I mean, like to then follow what's there further under point 4 and 5, the professional bodies and structures authority with the code of conduct, which actually is referring, you know, to a lot what we've been talking about, also in terms of, you know, conflict of interest aspects and so on. So I do believe, I mean, with the professional credentialing, though, then is, you know, the aspect of being a certified professional, a public health professional. Here, I mean, we heard the story of a nutritionist as well, but there are many other, and then to contribute what could, and we truly believe in ASPHER, be considered as the public health profession, with the wide endorsement across the European region, and further also within the global context, since particularly once it comes, you know, to professional credentialing, we believe that one of the kind of selling points could indeed be to take this, as well as all the standard setting agenda in public health, you know, would be to take it at the sort of global level, of course, since public health knows no border, and a lot what we are trying and then we are challenged in Europe, you know, exists of course in other regions as well, and can be addressed and synergized, you know, if there are also some advancements on other sides these days, since with all the pandemic context that brought so many complexities, I mean, like, it does provide a chance for public health to be more recognized and for public health workforce to be strengthened. And we are doing this. I mean, one of the example is the Erasmus Plus funded project focusing actually on Israel situation, the capacity building focus on public health workforce in the country there. But we're doing it in a way, you know, to develop a framework for country intervention, you know, in other localities of ASPHER network, as a lot of tools, you know, the competency framework, the core curriculum aspect, you know, the roadmap itself, you know, the future, well, I mean, already the accreditation standards would exist there, you know, with the agency set up by ASPHER, and professional credentialings to follow with the professional bodies scenarios and code of conduct. These are kind of tested a bit, you know, in that project in a public health system in Israel, but can be easily translated into other country context. And skipping this, I mean, like, just to finalize, and then, you know, perhaps we could discuss some of this more concretely, also moving on from that background, the context picture of what ASPHER is, and with the roadmap background information that I hope that will interest you. I mean, this is developing in the coming months and years. What's there also a bit more like low-hanging fruits, let's say, within the ASPHER 2025 agenda, what we as association offer, what actually does address a lot of your questions as well, and individual situations. The initiative called the Public Health Hub, which we throughout the COVID times now moving forward with expanding on the online infrastructure of the association. We have these 3 functionalities in mind, to be addressed by that online platform, including the public health career guidance, linking basically the existing challenges across the region with functions needed to address those challenges, and then available training, to equip you with the competences to skillfully address those functions, and then further be an employable and happy public health professional, successful one in practice. Also linking to this, what translates how, speaking of training and practice, since a kind of also a known statement is like the 2/3 of public health workforce lacks the training background in public health, while 2/3 of public health graduates all kinds of, lack attractive employment opportunities as well. So to kind of challenge this mismatch, we will hopefully put an effective kind of an online tool there for you to follow. That would be partly supported also by the public health training, and more simple to being a sort of repository of available training, including what's very important, the continuing professional development, because we talk a lot about public health curricula. Not everything must or should be addressed or must be addressed by general public health programs such as MPH at either for the residency level or the general public health or other masters. The essence, and that is also so much resulting from and rooted in the idea of the professionalization, is actually to develop and have the schools of public health to respond to it. The continuing professionals, so the offer of short trainings available there for one to sort of go either into in-depth training, or perhaps, if one wishes to, and of course gain from the richness of the possibilities that public health as a field offers, to switch careers. You are yourself saying, about, I switched from this to that, or I'm no longer in public health, but still connected. This is the kind of thing that we should be, or particularly excited about being part of the public health workforce. And that is exactly, what this hub context in these 2 first functionalities would address. The practical knowledge and engagement is more for the academic settings. Is actually addressing one of the last few interventions. We're speaking about how what happens with the research done there, by you, and that is exactly like a platform to match research interests. Build collaborative networks, publication teams across ASPHER across ASPHER membership network, as you can imagine. It would be, I'm sure, interesting for you to learn about similar challenges you are having, and perhaps similar positions, interests also, like across the region that we live in. And moving then further from the hub initiative, which is largely to live online and use the digital context, there are some offerings which hopefully, particularly post-pandemic time, I could offer some opportunity for better networking and interaction within the association members. It's leadership training for academic public health. We're now launching this. With the first cohort. It's specifically for as ASPHER mandate. ASPHER members do provide leadership training for the wider public health workforce in practice. While association as such, we do focus on the academic public health, to train deans, directors, people in the decision-making roles in schools across academia in public health, to recognize exactly, and realize the whole, this challenge that I've been talking about, and sort of effectively move forward. This is done actually within the global network for academic public health, so it's not biased with the European perspective. It's I think very attractive offering, for, as I said, the senior leadership of our membership. But moving then further, more towards the next generation, one could say, public health professionals. The association does offer the fellowship program. It's a paid offering, nice, and recently also introduced 2 years ago with some great success stories with 2 fellows. The current one actually working on the climate and health action, Part of this fellowship is, that the person is strongly linked with the ASPHER agenda, and at least with the regular fellowship, addressing the core curriculum and the competency context. So as you may imagine, I mentioned that the competency framework itself is a dynamic document. So we are addressing, either the emerging or the kind of most or specific areas. I mean, having said that, apart from linking through the fellowship, we do also actually address the field epidemiology now and infectious disease competence set done by ECDC with the project funded through ECDC. So all this we kind of synergize to contribute to that Europe. So it's not in isolation. All what I'm presenting in the earlier slide on the public health professionalization, we are trying, to synergize other sort of more concrete beds and, like a project, a particular project and funding-led initiative, to sort of streamline into this kind of a region level and a global picture. So fellowship, I mean, is a great opportunity for young professionals to contribute to this development. As I said, I mean, a particular area and topic, I mean, it's less important. More important is how, I mean, one wants to approach it. I mean, there is information on the current fellowship available with actually the current call. Also, we are trying to set up within the EU health policy platform a thematic network on the topic led by us, and it's truly I think a pleasure to work with those people, but also great to see how they really grow through this program. Another opportunity, I mean, is the mentoring program through the particularly through the platform called Assets. It's the ASPHER Summer School on mentoring context, which it's amusing. I mean, it's in fact following very much the scenario of this seminar, with a number of people coming into summer school without a particular topic, but with their own personal stories. They bring it to the event, and I mean to that summer school, and then being sort of getting feedback, not so much top down, but kind of in a dialogue format, from an experienced people, like different stages of their career, but like it's very much enriching. I mean, we had only one actually in-person edition, because we started that program back in 2019, when it was still possible to do a week-long event in Brussels at that time. It's open to us for members since last year. For obvious reasons, we had to move digital. Next week we actually have this year's edition, Monday, Tuesday only, so 2 days. And actually there is one person, I think, from ISPUP that is within the participants. You might check relevant details, but that's yet another option. All this sort of addressing, again, I mean, I'm speaking to it and perhaps for too long, but I wanted to brief you about those tools and the opportunities are really there, so you don't focus sometimes on can-dos, but also what you can actually do to advance. And then the more loose structure, but I think the most dynamic and active, is the Young Professionals program. And we had just a new intake. I mean, it includes the young researchers, so more the research-focused context, but the aspect of this is really, and also responding to some of the interventions today, is to put you in action, and showing you like how you may impact with whatever interests you have, with a very short-term sort of assignment, being supervised by senior people coming from us for membership network. This group, for instance, been tremendously. I will share the links behind this talk now. I mean, in a moment through chat. Has been tremendously active and productive through the ASPHER COVID-19 task force, publishing a lot. So great, for the academic growth of people as well, particularly those in PhDs, postdoc positions, and so on. Yes, and then what differs this from other young professionals, young leaders for health networks, is that it is truly, I mean, with close links with ASPHER member institutions. So we do really pay close attention to the affiliation context, of those in the program to be linked with ASPHER member schools. And on the sort of productivity, so you could see from the page I will share in a moment about the richness of publications, the peer review ones, the commentaries, also journal articles, contacts with media, all this also to strengthen all the skills that you've been talking about, like about different communication skills, being actually addressed also by the mentioned competency framework, so this relations and interactions context. And then again, I mean, just to get inspiration, but not to be too biased, because I mean, I also had, earlier today another meeting, on the taxonomy of public health workforce, which I was saying, well, let us kind of try, I mean, start to, I mean, first address and advance, on the, and conclude, right, on the public health professionalization framework before we try to categorize. Otherwise, any taxonomy effort, is futile, as it will be largely biased by the local kind of settings and whoever leads on the study. But there are publications such as 101 plus careers, on kind of like career stories, of different individuals in public health coming from different regions. It was, I think, the third edition of this published by Mayman School now recently, or it's going to be out in August. And another interesting, and I smiled when I watched it today, I will share this link with you as well, that this is public health, or kind of a sister campaign of it, an I Am Public Health campaign. 5 years ago, when ASPHER had the 50th anniversary, we were celebrating in Athens at the National School of Public Health, that by the way no longer exists now. It's been integrated within the one of the Athens University structures. So it also shows the kind of a trend, of this more administrative sort of level based structures, like moving to academic settings. But we had that campaign at that time going, and one of the sort of short products that were developed at that time has been a short video where we recorded several young people speaking of the professional, education background, and how do they contribute as public health. And then there were people, like from wide variety of fields. So public health generalists, medical doctors, psychologists, dietitians, lawyers. I will show you this video, and it's interesting. And with this, I would like, to close this talk, and sorry for being perhaps too long, but this is to sort of call for this attention of the importance of that professional network, because I fear that unless we really truly advance on those 5 points, and we are halfway through, and we have all the needed alliance, around, at all levels, we just need the kind of commitment with schools of public health. We do have great capacity. We have buildings, we have people behind, the faculty, students, alumni, to all over. By the way, one person speaking 5 years ago, been actually in the pharmaceutical business setting as well, from Germany. Also, no borders, like pharma, non-pharma industry context. Of course, following in then with strong reference, to the code of conduct context. But I feel that, if we do not address those, that agenda, we'll be back 5 years or 10 years time, with exactly the same struggles. Speaking about the same struggle, public health professionals, and some of them, of course, depending on the setting, more successful than other, but not really advancing, and strengthening the field itself, So we do have now this momentum, created by the pandemic. We do have capacity, and we need to act. I will share with you that video. For a matter of time, perhaps not worth to watch it, but please take it with you and those who are watching us on YouTube, and enjoy it. And I hope it was still contributing to the discussion that we may still have now if the time allows. Thank you so much for the invitation. Pleasure.
Thank you, Robert. I think it was useful to understand that we have some places where we can learn some of those things. I do imagine that hard skills training are easier to be done than soft skills, like leadership. For sure, we can just point the main important issues that should be given, but then training it on workshops can be more difficult. And maybe we can, or we should, ask people from other areas that are not from public health to work with us and to train us. But yeah, for sure, there are some places we can learn from. And it is interesting because one thing that you mentioned in the beginning, training in public health is a bit broad. So it's really a huge area. So for sure, some people prefer one of the topics and others the other topics, but maybe some common grounds. And many of those people that are from different careers pointed some common points that needed to be better addressed. And that can be just addressed, as you said, either on MPH or in a continuum training, in different workshops, online, presentially. This can be for sure given. And as you mentioned as well, the pandemic has at least put public health in the newspapers. So we could take some profit from this and show, okay, we have this training, but we need to be, well, have better teams, better training, be better recognized, at least knowing what is public health and having the disease public health quite broadly shown in different places. I don't know if there are any comments from from our guests about these points that Robert has mentioned, or other points that you just did not mention previously.
If you'll allow me, just a couple of quick points. So I think first of all, it's excellent to see that things are progressing and that COVID opened space to advance very important discussions around how can we move forward with all of this. It's a lot to go through. I think that one of the things Robert mentioned and that we alluded to initially as well is the need for flexible training. And we will need hard skills always as a baseline, otherwise we'll never be good professionals. But then there's a lot of things that will also depend on what profession we have and what career choices we make. And something that today seems irrelevant to us may tomorrow be absolutely essential for our work, depending on our own change in functions or the evolution of our careers or our aspirations, etc. So having a network that you can resort to that is wide enough that it can be adaptable to your own needs is obviously excellent from the standpoint of education. And I think it's something that, in terms of the Institute itself, or whatever public health school, is something that is very important that you can provide to your students and the people who studied but are no longer studying, that you can provide links to professionals that can support their career development or that can help them in specific technical skills, or they can point people to other schools that reinforces again the need for cooperation, even across disciplines. Because I mean, it's interesting, and I'd like to go back to something that Carlos was mentioning earlier in the discussion with the role of the public health authority in Portugal. So you have there is a specific public health career, which is the career, the public health doctor, which has sort of an enforcement responsibility attached to it, the health authority responsibility, which is something very specific. And then you have, let's say, the rest of public health, not to make a differentiation, but then you have a much wider concept of public health. And that's where I think there's a big difference in terms of even the training that is required for one part and the other part. And if I can divert a little bit in the issues related to the health authorities or to the use of law in public health, which is something that I'm very passionate about, because I work mostly with people, or I have worked mostly with people who are in the bad parts of the law. People who use drugs, people who do sex work, people who are marginalized, discriminated and mistreated by a lot of people in society. And I think that going back to what we were mentioning regarding the space that COVID opened to discuss public health, that is something that we should leverage from now on, and something that I really think it's really important that at a national level, because the space is different from country to country, but I think it's something we should really, really leverage in the coming years as public health people in general. And so sorry for the expression, but the average knowledge of the population is very low everywhere. The people are not exactly, I mean, unfortunately, we do not live in a world where everyone is extremely well educated, very well informed, etc. So making evidence-based decisions or rational decisions about a lot of things is hard to expect from a lot of people, even given life circumstances, financial situation. You can't ask a person that I mean, if you don't have money, you can have a good diet, for example. I'm looking at Luis on nutrition, for example. It's very difficult unless you educate people for that. And if we have the space to speak about public health coming from COVID, we need to leverage that space to speak about all the other issues, or at least some of the other issues related to public health. more that, and I think we need to invest more in that than on the legal aspects, although I do think that the legal framework is very important, because enforcing health, enforcing anything in general tends to have negative consequences, and people will want to break prohibition always. It's proven in every attempt of prohibition that we had. Adam and Eve broke prohibition. It was the only one thing they couldn't do, and they got kicked out. So I think that we really should focus on positive education as much as we can, and obviously have a good legal framework to back it up.
Marta, do you want to add in the discussion?
Yeah, I just want to add something really quick. So one, it's about the way that we sell what we do. I think we focus too much on the negatives. We spend 30 minutes talking about the bias of the study, and then we forget to sell the value of everything that we do. So sometimes when I move to pharma in the world where people see a lot of the positives, I had to shift my brain totally. So I think we need to learn that perhaps more from the beginning. So also focus and sell the things that we do and see the positives of everything, that we have a lot of quality in the things that we do. So we just need to manage and say that in a very open way. The second thing, I think it's important for us to learn from the beginning how to speak to people that don't speak the same language that we do. I think that's critical because we are super focused in communicating to peers in conference and with our colleagues, with our teachers. And it would be nice also to learn that from the beginning, how to speak to other audience. Because if we don't manage to communicate outside, then we will not be able to get outside our small world. So just 2 points.
Yeah, it's and the thing is, we need to have this professional network to get strong, etc. But we need to interact a lot with the remaining groups of the society to keep, well, at least having a good communication skill, and to listen to them and to hear their opinions, and then to show what we do in a positive way. It is very, 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 very interesting. And I do understand what Danielle is saying about leveraging, public health is not only about COVID, it's about other things that we already got. So our efforts got these kind of situations. There are others that could be also improved if we do X and Y. The legal framework sometimes is useful only to, well, have some enforcement in some situations. Of course, having the prohibition is quite difficult. And as you mentioned, Danielle, there is still this huge log of information about inequalities, inequities. Okay, how does the context really affect the way people behave? And even about behavioral science, people are not so well educated on that. And then we have to want to do promotion, health promotion, but not having this kind of skills. So it's quite difficult to do it. I think that these kind of discussions are actually necessary to just at least to put us thinking about this and trying to figure out how to create a common some directions that could improve our professions. I don't know if you have any other comments that you want to share, or Robert, if you want to discuss this or to answer to this.
Well, maybe only, to just call again, to use the material and the reference documents which are there, to guide your questions, and how you're going to advance on this. So we don't repeat. I mean, because I do agree. I mean, such sessions are greatly inspiring, and I'm sure very much helping those participating or listening. But I mean, it would be nice to sort of advance on it and see progress that we make in all the doubts. I mean, like that our after all, I mean, quite challenging field, but also so, I mean, ASPHER president, Professor John Middleton, a former president of the UK Faculty of Public Health, the standard setting body in the UK, is quite developed professional system for public health workforce in the UK. He seems, I mean, he tends to always say, like public health is the best job in the world, but then, like we need to bring the meaning behind it, right? Because there are people, like those more visible, who are bringing those success stories, but there is a large number, of others, who struggle. And they need that sort of, at least an awareness of what is there for them, to seek guidance, to seek help, to seek support, or at least, some sort of, like exchange, because I do agree also with Marta, we need to stay positive and, focus on the bright side, but it is truly there. And that's why I was trying, to also show that with those developments, already undertaken, I mean, we are on the right track, to have similar discussions, like, I mean, you all is already successful, even more, through the arrangements being set up, like public professionals, but, the newcomers being confident about their career choices, with less, more clarity than doubts and questions, because yet another, again, not to be pessimistic, I mean, like, how many people end up in public health, as kind of a second, third, or whatever, like career choice as well. That's yet another question. So yeah, so we have to kind of make use of what's there available now. I mean, be part of development of it, and yes, and go beyond, let's say, also your local setting. So see, what's and understand, what's there. But that's kind of, yeah, obvious, in public health, of course, since you can't be too much focused on your sort of, like like the very local setting. So yeah, so that would be, again, my advice, echoing what I've already been saying. And I'm also at your disposal, for any sort of, like after the seminar questions and directions also on other works that we've been doing, like on law aspects, actually we do collaborate very closely with, we have a strong public health law working group, and with top people in the field from all over actually the world, and working on the public health law core functions, and sort of bringing the legal professionals strongly into the public health workforce, which, I mean, in some countries is actually a remedy, for public health being dominated by medical professionals as well, which, because then, of course, strong professions tend to respect themselves more than sort of a variety of lost people then dominated by one professional group. So it's all there, I mean, and we're recognizing this, acting, to address this, and I hope that this future like seminars, will show this advancement and positive picture ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So I just want to thank you all for being here, and also Nora that I had to leave. And thank you for sharing the ideas, sharing what you feel that are positive and less positive points that need to be improved, showing that we need to have some flexibility and some capacity of adjustment, and well, having or putting some light in some points that we need to work further. Thank you, Robert, for showing what ASPHER has to offer us and to offer to our colleagues. And I hope that everyone on YouTube is, well, liked to follow us, and those will follow us in the future. And thank you for being with us. I will ask you not to switch off, because Joanna will just switch off the streaming, and so that we can just say hello or bye. Joanna.